Hello and welcome to another marvelous video. I'm your host Will. On this channel, we sometimes like to talk about the magic that happens behind the movies. But in this case, let's talk about some curses that happened. In today's video, we're gonna talk about 8 cursed movie sets. Let's get to it.
We all grew up with stories of the Exorcist movie set being haunted, and how the cast and crew involved faced inexplicable paranormal activities. Hell, they had to bring in a priest to bless the production and continue filming. Turns out, there are many more sets with similar stories like The Exorcist, alleged sightings, bizarre on-set accidents, unsuspected injuries, or just some eerie coincidences. Whatever it was, it sure as hell scared the members and worked as a PR charm. So let's check out some of the most ill-fated movie sets in the history of cinema. Poltergeist, 1982, 1986, 1988. Poltergeist needs no introduction. It's been one of the go-to choices for horror movie lovers for decades. So a poltergeist in folklore basically refers to noisy and destructive ghosts who are responsible for causing weird activities in a home, like randomly moving objects. It's often believed that poltergeists are drawn towards houses with children, especially girls. Anyway, the trilogy was based on this lore, where the Freelings have had the bad luck of choosing homes inhabited by spirits targeting their children. Curiously enough, over the course of shooting these 3 films, 4 cast members died. I know it just might be a horrible coincidence because 2 of those deaths, that of Julian Beck and Will Sampson, were kind of expected due to their chronic illnesses. However, I am inclined to believe in the supernatural aspects because the other 2 were way too sudden. See, I'm a sucker for such tales, I can't help it. The 22-year-old actress, Dominique Dune, who played the role of Dana Freeling in the first movie, suffered a gruesome death on November 4th, 1982. Her boyfriend choked her so bad and was admitted to the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, but sadly never woke up. A couple weeks later, Dominique broke up with her abusive partner, John Sweeney, a chef with whom she was in a live-in relationship. On October 30th, John dropped by to request her to amend things, but the conversation did not go well, and he strangled her for a good 4 to 6 minutes and left her for dead in the driveway. Sweeney was convicted of manslaughter, but was released pretty soon. He was supposed to serve 6.5 years in prison, but managed to reduce his sentence to just 3 years and 8 months, which of course raised a lot of eyebrows. Next up, we have the tragic passing of a 12-year-old child actor, Heather O'Rourke. She played Carol Ann Freeling in all 3 movies, and in 1988, the little girl died from what was thought to be an ordinary flu. She went from a lively youngster to a dead girl on an operating table. These untimely and mysterious deaths have led to the popular saying that they were victims of the poltergeist curse, and I would have debated, but these deaths don't make sense if not for some kind of a jinx. The Omen, 1976. The Omen is a celebrated classic, which considerably influenced the horror genre in the 70s and continues to do so even today. You probably wouldn't trust me now if I say that the story of Damien, a young child who was the Antichrist, almost did not happen due to filming difficulties. However, the truth is, nearly as many bad things happened in the production as they happened in the movie. Omen's set was doomed. You can't change my mind about it. The son of the protagonist, Gregory Peck, took his own life the same year as filming started. That's a huge blow to deal with. But before the team could cope with this tragedy, a crew member was seriously injured in a car accident while driving to the set. And guess what? His accident was eerily similar to a scene from the movie. Things got worse. Peck's plane, which was on the way to the film's location, was struck by lightning. In fact, even the one in which the film's executive producer, Mace Nayfeld, was flying in, faced a similar fate a few weeks later. Nayfeld's troubles lasted longer as the hotel he and his wife were staying in London witnessed a terrorist bombing. Boy, they should have just ran for their lives. The crew was using a private airplane to travel between locations, and on one fine day, the plane took off only to crash onto a road. It hit a car, which then hit another vehicle. About 11 people lost their lives in this accident. I don't think these could be dubbed as technical glitches. The production even dealt with the death of an animal trainer who was mauled by a lion, or some sources say a tiger, on set. Understandably, Peck refrained from doing any publicity of the film before it hit the big screen. Even after the film's release, the set's curse stayed with the members. 2 months later, the film's special effects supervisor, John Richardson, was driving with his assistant, Liz Moore, when they met with a freak accident. John survived, but Liz didn't make it, and the nearby sign for a town read, wait for it, Omen, 66.6 kilometers. I have goosebumps. Rosemary's Baby, 1968. Yet another movie about satanic themes and yet another curse. Personally, I think Rosemary's Baby went through one of the worst experiences, even after its release. Sidney Blackmer, who played the coven leader, Roman Castevet, clearly mentioned on set that nothing good would come out of this Hail Satan business, and boy was he right. Soon after shooting began, the famous horror flicks producer, William Castle, got an anonymous letter which stated that he would slowly rot due to a long and painful disease. It turned out to be true, because Castle collapsed and had to undergo a gallbladder surgery. The composer, Krzysztof Kometa, fell and got brain injuries which ultimately claimed his life. The set was slowly edging towards earning the moniker of a disaster magnet in Hollywood, and it did so in 1969. Sharon Tate was murdered by the Manson family, marking one of the most notorious crime stories in the history of America. Now, Sharon Tate was the wife of Roman Polanski, the director of Rosemary's Baby, and she was 8.5 months pregnant with their son at the time of her death. Polanski was away working in Europe when Sharon was murdered inside their house. Apart from these, the cast and crew got sick from food poisoning, and one of the producers had a stroke while driving to the set. Personally, it was Sharon Tate's murder which made me believe in Rosemary's Baby's production being truly sinister. The Passion of the Christ, 2004. Before being slammed with an R rating, God gave a clear sign not to make this film about Christ's crucifixion. Sure, it earned a massive amount in the box office, and that heavenly signal seemed useless in hindsight. But not so for our on-screen Jesus, Jim Caviezel. During the filming of this movie in 2003, Jim was struck by lightning on set in Italy. Yes, he was literally zapped before the director could nail him to a cross. Fun fact, the assistant director, Michelini, incurred the wrath of the thunder gods twice, and one of them was with Jim. Jim and Michelini were sharing an umbrella when lightning hit them, and producer Steve McAvity recalled the scene as if the lights were coming out of Jim's ears. The main bolt struck Jim while one of its branches hit Michelini's umbrella. Both men survived the incident, but Jim had to bear the brunt of it for a long time. It caused him long-term illness, for which Caviezel had to undergo 2 heart surgeries with ongoing medication. Sadly, Jim's ordeal had just begun. A few days later, the 150-pound wooden cross fell on him. The man bit his tongue so hard that the blood we saw coming out of his mouth was real. Jim also dislocated his shoulder while carrying the cross. He had to endure all this pain and continue shooting in extreme weather conditions where the chilly winds caused Jim to catch pneumonia. The rest of the cast and crew too suffered in such harsh climate. I guess it's safe to assume that the filming of The Passion of the Christ did not really please Christ, and he punished the team in every way possible. The Conqueror, 1956. Oh man. The people involved in this movie were probably on God's hit list, because nothing worse could have happened to anyone than what happened to the cast and crew of The Conqueror. The film, directed by Dick Powell, is considerably old, and not all of you might be familiar with it. So here goes the basic premise. Released in 1956, it was a historical drama about the Mongol invader Genghis Khan, directed by Dick Powell. A same old epic narrative with a woman in the middle of all the fights. Genghis kidnaps Bortai, the daughter of the Tartars' leader Kumlek, and forced her to marry him. However, somehow she ended up aiding him, and the movie concluded with Genghis Khan forming the Mongol Empire. Honestly, it's not worth a watch. All we had was a poor script and an actor who wasn't even remotely Mongolian. The Conqueror was pretty much done for when it came to the box office. Yet, the real deal was way more serious than cinematic failure. The movie was filmed in Utah, in a region which was just 150 miles away from the Nevada test site. You see where this is going, right? The Conqueror was cursed by the atomic bomb. At the Nevada test site, the US government had set off 11 above-ground nuclear bombs just a year before shooting started. While filming, the cast and crew would be constantly covered in dust blown by the wind, and later on, producer Howard Hughes even shipped 6 goddamn tons of the radioactive dirt back to the studios for reshoots. Why on earth didn't somebody knock some sense into this mad person? The result was no shock. 91 team members out of a total of 220 were diagnosed with cancer. Pedro Armendariz, who played Jamuga, initially recovered from kidney cancer, but committed suicide when another form of the disease was detected. Agnes Moorehead passed away due to uterine cancer. The director himself died of lung cancer. The illness was even passed on generationally in some cases, and some of the actors' kids who visited the set had to deal with cancer later in life. Dr. Robert C. Pendleton, director of radiological health at the University of Utah in the 80s, termed it as an epidemic. He said that statistically, no one could expect around 30 people to catch the disease within the given group size. The whopping number of 91 qualified as an outbreak. I don't think I have ever heard of a movie with this deadly an outcome. The Wizard of Oz, 1939. The magical land of Oz was just a facade for the screen because beyond all the spells, endless troubles plagued the production. For starters, the makers had to hastily recast the Tin Man when the original actor who was chosen to play the role, Buddy Ebsen, suffered a near-fatal reaction to the aluminum makeup. No sooner than they dealt with this mess, yet another cast member, Margaret Hamilton, got seriously injured. I'm sure you remember the scene when the Wicked Witch disappeared in smoke in Munchkinland. Well, Margaret also almost disappeared from the face of the earth. The trapdoor malfunctioned, and she got second-degree burns, which was worsened by the copper makeup she was wearing. The crew rushed to remove the toxic materials and ran for medical help. See, injuries on sets are a common thing, and I know this doesn't sound like much of a curse. Still, think about it. 2 back-to-back incidents which literally threatened the lives of 2 major performers. Pretty sure they looked at their roles as unlucky. In fact, I am convinced Hamilton's character came with a bag of jinxes. Betty Dank, who was hired to play her body double, had to be taken to the hospital when a prop broom went boom. Even 2 background actors who were playing the winged monkeys, which, by the way, is still one of my favorite parts about Wizard of Oz, fell and hurt themselves when their wires snapped. The production is now beginning to sound ill-fated enough, huh? Rebel Without a Cause, 1955. You saw this one coming. It would be an injustice to talk about cursed sets without including Rebel Without a Cause. My brother is an annoying prick, but he got me the DVD, and if you are watching this, Dave, I'd always be grateful for just this one thing. Nicholas Ray made this absolutely brilliant coming-of-age drama, and Rebel Without a Cause has only gained more and more appreciation over the years. Yet no amount of accolades could hide the horrible luck it bestowed upon the Golden Trio. James Dean, Natalie Wood, and Sal Mineo. All of them died in abrupt and suspicious situations. It started with the 24-year-old Dean, who passed away in a car crash just weeks before the premiere. Dean's death was enough to shroud Rebel Without a Cause in sorrow, but, as fate would have it, Wood and Mineo's grotesque deaths further tainted the film's legacy. Neither of them passed away anytime close to the film's release, let alone during filming. However, Mineo was stabbed to death in a robbery outside his apartment in Los Angeles, and Wood drowned off Catalina Island under mysterious circumstances. Their demise was far from being normal, and decades later, Rebel Without a Cause found itself definitively marked as one of the most inauspicious movies of all time. Somehow, the movie never managed to climb out of misfortune, as 2 other actors attached to it, Edward Platt, committed suicide, and Nick Adamus died of a drug overdose, as of official reports. The Innkeepers, 2011. Oh boy, I absolutely love horror films about haunted hotels. Room 1408? What a delight. And when Ty West's 2011 movie, The Innkeepers, dropped, I was there on the very first weekend, and it did not disappoint. 2 employees desperate to expose that the hotel they are working in experiences supernatural activities when old guests check in. To be honest, I was all in ever since the trailer dropped. Interestingly, they shot at the Yankee Paddler Inn, which supposedly witnesses poltergeist activities in real life. Now, whether they cashed in on the stories to market it, or there are some shreds of truth in it, is up to debate. But listen to this just for the thrill. Reportedly, the cast and crew would see the lights and televisions flicker constantly, and many crew members had disturbingly vivid dreams at night, which made their stay at the hotel uncomfortable. What's even more weird is that the room West chose to shoot in, the honeymoon suite, turned out to be the very room where most of the paranormal activities happened in the hotel. It definitely could have been a coincidence, but with the widespread stories about Yankee Paddler, it is absolutely possible that some otherworldly force might have been at work. Alright guys, that's all for today. There are a ton of other movie productions that experience the real drama behind the cameras, but these happen to be our top picks for the day. Do feel free to keep adding to the list. I'm gonna go and read up some more cursed set stories because I have questionable bedtime choices. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!